Ishita.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Are you Ishita or Ishita? Yes. TA or THA?
Sir, TA.
वो तो स्पेलिंग है, लेकिन बोलने में क्या बोलते हैं? ता या टा?
Sir, Ta.
ता.
Yes, sir.
ताजा. तालुक. Okay, good. You come from a police family. ये सही बात है?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Your father works in UP Police or Delhi Police?
Sir, Delhi Police.
Mother also works in Delhi Police.
Yes, sir.
Not CSF. I thought she works in CSF. Both of them work, and your father is also in service still.
Yes, sir.
Good, good. So आप जो है, you have done both MA and BA. BA तो beautiful college, Lady Shri Ram College, LSR.
Yes.
Very high standard. Our school to DAV, Dayanand Anglo Vedic College, not college, school. But your MA Economics is from Madras School of Economics. I never heard of this Madras School of Economics. That too from 2017 to 2019. Is it by distance education or you physically went to Chennai?
Sir, I physically went there.
Achha, there is some kind of a central university in Madras. I didn't know that.
Sir, it is affiliated to Central University of Tamil Nadu.
Oh, there is a Central University of Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Madras University was started way back in 1857. That university I know, but I don't know about the Central University of Tamil Nadu. Is it a central government's institute or a state government institute?
So it's a private institute.
Oh, private.
Yes.
So, okay, hawa utar gayi hamara. I thought this. No, we have in Hyderabad, University of Hyderabad, UH.
Yeah.
Even the
CUTL is also Central University, like Hyderabad Central University. Her Madras school is private.
Yes,
so they're exploiting. So obviously you had to pay some fees and all that. Yeah. Were you given any fee waivers?
No, sir. There were no scholarship offered.
Private, so it is for profit. Hai. आप जानते हैं economics.
Yes.
Good. So your optional is also economics.
Yes, sir.
लोग डरते हैं. Normally, you know, I have seen many MA economics students opting for anthropology. और आप जो है इतना दम है आप में, you opted for economics and you have come up to the interview stage. That means you must be having stuff. वैसे तो what is your strong point, macroeconomics or microeconomics?
Sir, I have more interest in macroeconomics.
बहुत अच्छा है. You will be someday maybe secretary of one of the important key economic ministries, inshallah. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So I have nothing more to ask. Our former chief secretary, who is well into these kind of economic affairs, etc., he certainly will ask you more relevant questions. I'll now hand you over to Dr. M.G. Gopal, former chief secretary of Telangana State. ठीक है?
Yes, sir.
Gopal garu.
Yes, sir. Yes. So, Ms. Ishita, can you hear me and see me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, I have known of this institute called Madras School of Economics. I think Professor Rangarajan is the mentor and chief advisor. But recently, Tamil Nadu government have passed an act in respect of this institution. Earlier, this institution was affiliated to Central University of Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
Why do you think this separate act has been passed by the Tamil Nadu state government? Are you aware of it?
Sorry, sir, I'm not aware of this particular development.
Okay. It has become autonomous. It can give its own degrees. It's like the IITs, you know, having autonomy to give degrees. So earlier, Central University of Tamil Nadu used to give all right. This new act, perhaps because you studied in this, according to me, it's a very reputed institution because I also studied economics. And don't be scared, as the chairman said, I also took economics as an optional way back in 82, 81, 82. Yes. All right. Now, okay, as an economics student, now please reflect on the way, Delhi government has decided to give water up to certain quantity to each household free. And some parties are promising, you know, free power of 200 units, 300 units in Punjab, you know, the elections. So with this kind of announcements, how do you manage the demand and supply of these scarce natural resources? Can you explain?
So this is largely done through cross subsidization, and also Delhi government has a lot of revenue surplus because the police is not under the Delhi government. So it has accumulated revenue surplus over the years, which it might have been diverting to provide these kind of services, free services to the citizens.
But then if them comes free, it is
Yes.
also wasted. So while giving it free, how do you ensure that the unscrupulous utilization of water more than required is punished? Give free up to 200, all right, but then what next?
So maybe what we can do is to provide incentive and nudge people in the direction that prompts them to save water. For example, we can give them incentive that if they use less than 200 units of water, then other units on which subsidy is provided would be reimbursed to them. So in that way, we can cap the usage of water by the people
Okay.
through providing them monetary incentives.
Okay. So generally, to protect these natural resources, how do you use tariff as an economic instrument to manage demand?
Sir, there can be different methods to which we can do that. One
Okay.
is the cap and trade mechanism, in
Mm.
which we can provide a ceiling beyond which the pollution cannot be done. And if done, that can be traded in the market. So in this way, we are actually creating a market for pollution to be traded. And through that, we can ensure that the total pollution is capped. Another could be that we enter into a kind of bond. That is, if the total pollution done by the industry is beyond a particular.
No, sorry, you didn't get my question right. By using tariff as an economic instrument to penalize the people who use indiscriminately these natural resources, okay, and to protect these natural resources for a sustainable future, what do you expect? What are you expected to do? Say, for instance, you get power at 1 rupee a unit, theoretically speaking. You tend to use certain units and you make it 10 rupees, exemplarily high. But what do?
So we have to maintain.
You have to reduce consumption.
Yes, sir.
So
we have to maintain a balance between the welfare of the people and the environmental welfare. So development and environment protection has to go hand in hand. So we can maybe do a cost benefit analysis to find out what kind of tariff would be apt and balancing both the things and nudging people in the right direction.
Okay, all right. Now tell me, there is one source in the country which gives you the details of the environment within the country. Since you studied in Madras School, which focuses on environmental economics more than anything, you should be able to tell me, which source gives you the information about, the state of environment in the country. Any idea?
The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change.
Have you heard of the State of Environment report being brought out every year by the Center for Science and Environment, the Down to Earth magazine, which gives?
Yes, sir. I've heard of it in the newspaper.
You have never gone through such a report?
No, sir. I'll go through it.
All right. Now, have you heard of the Sustainable Development Goals of UN?
Yes, sir.
So what are they, and where do we stand as a country, and where does Delhi stand as a state?
The Sustainable Development Goal has been announced by United Nations Development Program, and it is to be achieved by 2030. Okay. There are in total 17 Sustainable Development Goals. For example, goal number 1 has no hunger, and so on. Okay. So recently, Niti Aayog has released Sustainable Development Index report, which has measured the achievement of different states in the Sustainable Development Goals. And measuring from the past year, the improvement has been seen in almost all the states, the leading states being Kerala and some of the states from Northeast also, for example, Mizoram. They have done extremely well in the Sustainable Development Index report. Sir, with regards to Delhi, Delhi has improved in the sustainable development goal, which is related to the industry, innovation, as well as ease of living. But it is still yet to achieve other sustainable development goals.
Okay. If you have to look at India as a country vis-a-vis other countries relatively, in which goals are we lagging behind substantially?
So poverty and no hunger is one goal in which we are substantially lagging behind. Nearly 21% of India's population is still living below the poverty line, and almost 20 to 30% of the people are malnourished in the country. So we still need to make improvement in these areas.
Okay. Tell me something about the concept called environmental impact assessment.
Sir, environmental impact assessment seeks to assess the impact of the developmental activities on the environment. It seeks to find out what is the cost that the development as well as setting up of the industry is imposing on the environment. And based on that, certain initiatives would be taken. And it is largely a people-driven exercise, and it is widely discussed with people before arriving at the environmental impact assessment. There are certain industries which have been categorized as polluted, and it is mandatory to conduct this environmental impact assessment for them.
Okay. Did you look at the recent draft EIA of Government of India, which seeks to dilute some of these conditionalities? Have you heard of that?
Yes, sir.
So what does the new draft say?
Sir, I can remember some of the provisions.
Okay.
The time which has been provided for public consultation has reduced, because of which there has been retaliation from the local population.
Okay.
After certain period of time, a compliance report has to be submitted by the industries to show if they are complying with the environmental impact assessment. That period has also been enlarged, which is saying that essentially the pollution will go on without assessment. Sir, I can remember these two provisions.
Actually, that is a periodical assessment after the industry is set up. Periodically, they will have to report. Okay, all right, all right. Now, let us get into the question of appraising investments. How do you take investment decisions if you have 3-4 alternatives for investing your money? So how do you decide as to which project you should invest on? What are the various techniques available for appraising the investment opportunities?
Sir, one of the technique is calculating the net present value of the investment project. That project which has the highest net present value can be selected. And it also depends upon the goal of the industry or the enterprise, what it wants to achieve. Whether it wants to achieve high profit or high welfare for the people or high social impact. So based on that, various net present value can be calculated. So cost benefit analysis can also be done in order to find out whether the project would be viable. The rate of investment, the rate of interest that is to be paid can also be compared with the growth, annual growth, to find out the sustainability of the project as well. So these are some of the techniques which we can employ.
Okay. Do you know how to calculate the net present value?
So the cash flows in various years are divided by the rate of interest, 1 plus rate of interest, and in order to calculate the net present value.
Yeah, what is that rate otherwise known as? If you have to look at the discounted cash flows, what is that rate called as?
So discount rate.
Okay, all right, all right. Now, tell me something about the history of evolution of minimum support prices in the country, in India.
So the concept of minimum support price arose during the Green Revolution, wherein we wanted to increase the total food production and incentives were to be given to the farmers to take up the new variety of seeds as well as fertilizers for the growth of the food. And in order to assure that the crop would be procured by the state, the minimum support price came into being.
Okay. Now, keeping the current controversy apart, to give legal support to minimum support price and so on and so forth. Now, when you have abundant food production, say wheat and paddy, and you have no place to store, is the concept of minimum support price to encourage food production, as it were in during Green Revolution time in the mid-60s, is it still relevant?
Sir, in my opinion,
Hmm.
I don't think that minimum support price is still relevant because the main aim was to achieve food security and provide the safety net to the farmers. However, the food security has been achieved and it is essentially distorting the market in the food products. So, I agree that there should be some kind of economic support that should be provided to the farmer because of the volatility in the market. That can be achieved through direct benefit transfers, etc. But minimum support price, in my opinion, should be phased out. However, taking all the relevant stakeholders into consideration.
Okay. Now keep aside the market risk and the market price and the minimum support price. If the farmers suffer on account of vagaries of monsoon and various other reasons, how is their income indemnified or how is their crop insured? And how is the insurance policy of the government of India of Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana or whatever are the schemes which were there before? What is your understanding as to how these policies are working in the field?
So the Fasal Bima Yojana is being designed in order to provide the safety net to the farmers to protect them from the vagaries of monsoons, etc. However, there are issues because the insurance companies, they are not getting the reimbursement from the government on time, because of which they are not able to provide that safety net to the farmers. Moreover, there are issues with regards to checking the claims of the farmers as well. So there needs to be more technological intervention that is to be there in order to make these schemes foolproof and ensure it reaches to everyone. Moreover, many of the medium and small scale farmers, which comprise of 85% of the total farming community, are not getting the benefit of the Fasal Bima Yojana. So that needs to be addressed.
You mentioned about some reimbursement not being made to the insurance company. What do you mean by reimbursement? Reimbursement is something which you spend and you get back. Do you mean to say that the insurance companies are incurring some expenditure which is not being reimbursed by the states? What exactly did you mean?
So by that, I mean that as part of the total premium that is to be paid by the farmers to the insurance company, a large chunk comes from the central and the state governments. So that is not being given to the insurance companies on time.
Therefore, the claims are not settled.
Sorry, sir.
Therefore, the claims are not settled.
Yes.
Since the premium is not paid, when there is no premium paid, no, it's not settled.
Yes, sir.
Now, have you heard of one formula given to these insurance companies on experimental basis for the crop insurance, 110 and 80 rule?
Sorry, sir, I'm not aware.
You're not aware of it. All right, all right. Now, tell me something about the purpose of enactment on real estate called the Real Estate Regulatory Authority Act. And what is the objective and is it being achieved or not?
Sir, I'll have to read about it.
Okay, you have not heard of it. Okay, before I pass it on to my co-panelists, tell me the conditionalities attached to the states to increase their borrowings from 3% of GSDP under the FRBM Act to 5%. What are those conditionalities? Are they ready or no?
Yes, sir, there are certain conditionalities. For example, the implementation of One Nation, One Ration scheme, as well as other schemes, which the model schemes, which are released by the central government. Those states who have been able to achieve those or implement those, they are being given incentive to borrow additional 2% from the market.
Okay, that is one. One nation, one ration is one. Are there any other things?
The GST collection, the leeways which have been made by the state government in facilitating more GST collection.
Okay.
And
all right, all right, all right. Okay, carry on. Okay, thanks. Vivek Garu.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, very good evening. Very good evening. Good to see you that you have made it to this level now. And looks like this is your second attempt.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. I must, at the very outset, admire your, courage to opt for economics as optional and still make it. Very good indeed. Yeah. And I'm sure as part of your overall study of economics for nearly 5+ years, you would have certainly had some exposure to fiscal policies and different types of taxes and all that. So generally speaking, which type of tax is more regressive?
So the indirect taxes are more regressive in nature because they
Why is it
apply
so? Yeah.
so because
Yeah.
they apply equally to both the poor as well as rich. If a 10% tax is imposed on biscuit, then the same price is paid by the poor as well as that by the rich.
Okay. So, how does one actually, go about putting in place a good taxation policy? What are the general canons which are, observed?
So a good taxation policy needs to be visionary in nature. It needs to take into account the changing dynamics of the economy. And secondly, there needs to be reduced compliance cost so that more incentive is given to the taxpayers to comply with the tax policy. The avoidance cost should be very high, and there should be increase in imposing the penalty on those who are evading taxes. The cost of administration has to be also reduced so that the gross collection of revenue and the net collection of revenue are as close to each other as possible. And it should be more progressive in nature so that the redistribution can happen from the rich towards the poor, which is essentially the objective of a welfare state. Um,
And from the
Sir,
taxpayer's point of view, shouldn't there be some kind of a certainty?
yes, sir. There has to be certainty with regards to the tax which is being paid by them.
Good, good. And do you think the indirect tax reform that we have initiated in this country and celebrated the 4th anniversary just the other day has met with these objectives, these broad canons of good tax policy? Uh, are there any issues still outstanding? Tell me, as an economist, what is your judgment on the way GST is being implemented in our country today?
So the major achievement of GST is that it has been able to overcome the cascading effect of taxes, which was reducing the compliance as well as increasing the cost of compliance as well. Sir, GST collection has stabilized as we have seen that in the past few quarters, the revenue collection was more than 1 lakh crore rupees. Uh, Sir, however, there is still scope of improvement, particularly in the input tax credit. The administration as well as the giving out of the input tax credit can be made even better. The inverted duty structure can be changed so that more incentive is given to the producer to produce the commodity in the country. The tax slab is there are 5 tax slab essentially, so it needs to be consolidated and 3 tax slabs should be there so that the compliance cost is also reduced.
When you
It has
mentioned
improved.
about, yeah, I understand what you're going to say. When you mentioned about input tax credit, I thought it's part of the very scheme itself. Perhaps what you meant is refund mechanism, I suppose.
Yes,
Are you sure that input tax is not being given in the GST tax system?
sir, it is being given, but the refund has been delayed because of which many of the MSMEs who are very cash incentive, they are suffering.
So what you meant was rather refund rather than input tax credit. Okay.
Yes.
Now, in this context, let me find out from you what is reverse charge. Okay.
So reverse
Yeah, if you know, fine. Go on.
So reverse charge mechanism is essentially in the chain of production. The
Mhm.
producer, which is at the preceding level, has to pay its charges in order to issue the e-voice so that the input tax refund can be claimed by the next producer in the chain.
Anyway, okay, we'll come back to it later. Right. Now, tell me, as a female child of the family, now are you entitled to inherit, property of your ancestors?
Yes, sir. As per the new inheritance law, even the female child is entitled to receive.
What is that called? What is that right which you get as a matter of right at the time of your birth?
For inheritance right,
Oh, it's called co-parcenary right. Have you heard of this? Yeah,
No.
recently Supreme Court has also delivered a very landmark judgment on that issue. Okay. Now tell me, while talking about judges and judgments, sometimes you also read in the newspapers. Some judges in some cases are reluctant to hear some cases, and then they say, the judge has recused himself from this case. Why does he do that, and what is exactly the meaning of this word called recusal?
so recusal means he must be excused from hearing the case because there might be some kind of conflict of interest. And in a democracy, justice should not be just done, but it should also be seen to be done. So, in order to be impartial in the eyes of people and avoid the conflict of interest.
Yeah. Okay. Now tell me, what is this, Akbar versus Priya Ramani's case? What has happened, and how do you think, this entire movement of Me Too, has contributed in any way to, women's empowerment, and in terms of, asserting their own dignity uh, and safety of women in public domain?
Sir, I'm not exactly aware about what happened in the case, but with regards to the Me Too movement, it has provided women a platform to raise their voices in front of the public for any past experiences of harassment or any harassment they might be facing. So it has really helped in women empowerment, and also women have gained confidence to speak out about any kind of harassment that they might have faced. So social media is acting as an enabler. However, there are also certain issues that false allegations are also being made. The cases have come up. So the power of social media should not be underestimated. It is a double-edged sword, and we must be very careful by accepting the claim.
Now, talking of social media, um, particularly in the backdrop of pandemic and the new normal, people are not able to go and watch films and other cultural programs in the conventional cinema halls and things like that. Now you have what is called the new OTT platforms and all that. Okay, so the government actually has come up with some regulations. Uh, where was the need to come up with these regulations, and what are these regulations? Do you have any idea about these things?
The need was felt because there was no certification board, and the OTT platform is providing a level playing field to everyone to give forward any kind of content that they are making. So there is no censorship that is imposed. So that is why a need was felt. It is accessible by everyone, even the 18 below 18 years age. So it might have an impressionable impact on their personality, which might not be in the interest of the people. So that is why the regulations might have come.
Is there some kind of a censorship or some kind of a regulation on other types of media, such as print media or television media? Are you aware of any of those agencies which are into either regulating them or issuing in the nature of guidelines Can you name some of these agencies?
So most of the regulation are, they are self-regulated many a time, most of the media. Sir, there is film certification board, which looks towards the censorship of the films.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm not aware of other.
What about print media? The print media can print anything and still get away with it, or are there any restrictions? At least some kind of a moral code of conduct.
Sorry, sir, I'll have to look at it.
The press council of India. Okay.
Yes, sir.
The press council of India. And likewise for television, do you know any agency which regulates the kind of content which is aired through television? Sometimes when you watch television, do you see sometimes if you have some complaint, some scrolling keeps coming. Did you ever pay attention to that?
Sir, I cannot recall right now.
Okay. That's called News Broadcasting Association, NBA. Okay.
Yes.
So it's like mandatory. It is called disclaimer comes if you have some kind of a scrolling comes underneath the, if you have some problem or if you have any objections to the content being telecast, you can complain to this particular group. Now we keep hearing about Atmanirbhar all the time, and then few days back even our FM has come up with another version of Atmanirbhar. So what is that version number one? Number two, why is that so many iterations of Atmanirbhar are being churned out one after the other? What is the inherent drawback in this entire cycle called Atmanirbhar cycle after cycle, version after version?
So the need to introduce a new package was felt because the second wave of COVID, which was largely not anticipated by the authorities, has struck ravage in the economy. Sir, I believe it is the third version of Atmanirbhar package that has been launched.
That's right.
And sir, the inherent flaw that I can think of is that a lot of support has been given in the form of credit guarantee. Whereas what the economy requires is the improvement in the demand, increasing the demand in the economy. So there needs to be more direct benefit transfer to put money in the hands of people, increase the consumer confidence in the economy so that they can go out, because Indian economy is largely a consumption driven economy. And when the consumption is in the negative growth territory, then it becomes very difficult for economic survival.
Okay, if you have to put the issue in the binary of supply demand, what does this version 3 says actually? Which side it is trying to address this issue from?
So it is trying to address the issue from the supply side, but there is deficit in the demand in the economy right now.
Yeah. There is deficit in the economy because people don't have work, there is no money in their hands. So therefore, the government has to open up its money bags and put some money in the hands of the people. Only then the demand will come, isn't it? So all along you have been talking about demand side. Now it's a belated realization that you have to address the supply side of the mechanism. Isn't it? Okay, right. That was very good, speaking with you, Ishita, sorry. My co-panelist will continue this conversation with you.
Miss Ishita.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. You are from Delhi.
Yes, sir.
So Delhi, of course, in some ways it's controversial issues. We find more controversial issues in Delhi, maybe because of two types of governments there. One is about this amendment to the national capital of Delhi. I think you are well aware of this issue. What
Yes,
exactly is the issue and what is your understanding? What is your view on this amendment? Please throw some light on that.
Sir, Article 239 AA, read along with Government of National Capital Territory Act, it creates a lot of ambiguity with regards to the executive extent executive powers extent of the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister and the Governor. So the government has come out with the bill in order to streamline this and ensure that there is no conflict and provide more clarity with regards to the executive domain of the Governor and the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister.
Okay.
So the issue is that the elected government in the entity should be more responsible to the people, and it should be the one taking the executive decision. Even the Supreme Court's judgment has said that the governor has to oblige by the aid and advice given by the Council of Ministers, except in the matter of land, public order, and police. So this is the entire issue.
So in your view, whether this amendment is constitutional? Just now you have put it, yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, a very special place has been provided to Delhi. It is not a state in its entirety. Rather, it is a national capital territory. So certain executive powers need to be with the center as well. Sir, with regards to the constitutionality, it is a complicated matter, sir. There are no conflict or nothing is stopping government from doing that. But read in the spirit, the people in a democracy should have the power, and this particular bill seems to be doing something opposite to that.
So what I understand is that you are not clear whether it's a constitutional or not.
Sir, it is not. It is constitutional. Nothing is stopping the government from doing that in the constitution.
Now tell us, because of this amendment, do you feel that the democracy, the process of democracy can be taken forward or can be taken backward?
The democracy can never be taken backwards. It should always be taken forward. But certain provisions in the bill, for example, the concurrence of governor has to be taken before all the legislative and executive function of the government. The elected representative is essentially overpowering the appointed executive essentially overpowering the elected representative. So it is seen, in my opinion, as a regressive move with regards to democracy.
Okay. Ms. ISHITA, just now you have talked about women empowerment.
Yes, sir.
So how can we define this concept, women empowerment?
So women empowerment is all about giving agency to the women in terms of education and their voices to be heard, so that they can take essential decisions with regards to their own life and also make their voice heard in the family as well as in the public domain as well. So when the women is able to do that, then we can say that women is empowered.
Yeah, in the public domain, a voice is to be heard. That's very, very important. From that point of view, the parliament in the Rajya Sabha, a reservation for the women that was passed. But in the Lok Sabha, it is not yet passed. Now, what exactly the issue? Why the Lok Sabha is not interested to pass this bill? Everybody knows that they are for women empowerment, but why this is not moving forward? It was, in fact, in 2008, the Rajya Sabha passed this, but almost 13 years, but still there is no progress. Why is it so?
Sir, political will is required in order to pass the women reservation bill in Lok Sabha. I am not entirely aware about the issue to comment on it.
Okay. Parliament also passed for labor codes. I think you are aware of this?
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the necessity of passing these codes now?
Sir, necessity is arising because of the corona pandemic as well as the US-China trade war. A lot of industries are moving away from China and they are looking to other avenues to establish their global supply chain. And India wants to be a part of it. And in order to attract more and more investors, the rigidity that is there in the laws, which is essentially discouraging the investors to invest in the country, that is being amended and ensure that ease of doing business is there. Moreover, the rigidity in the labor laws is also hindering the growth of medium and small scale industry. So by amending them, even they can grow. And it is in line with the Atmanirbhar Bharat package that the government has launched in order to achieve self-reliance in critical areas.
So give us two specific areas where it is very positive.
So sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, give a couple of areas where it is very positive for the development of the industry.
Sir, one is the dispute resolution mechanism. Because of the rigid laws and ambiguities that are there in the laws, the dispute resolution becomes very difficult because some people comes with some claims which are there in the so the enforcement of contract and dispute resolution becomes difficult. And sir, there are certain laws which have become archaic. So removing that will ensure greater compliance and more incentive for the industry. So
I think you are talking about the 4 labor codes.
Yes, sir.
Now the trade unions, so they are not happy with these codes. Why they are not happy?
Sir, I think in the previous labor laws, there are multiplicity of trade unions that were formed, but through the amendment, that multiplicity has been done away with, and there is only one trade union that would be representative of the labor in a particular establishment. Okay.
Mrs. The, I think you are keenly observing the political developments in the capital. There is the president is empowered to nominate 12 members to the Rajya Sabha as per Article 80. Okay, so recently there is an issue regarding Swapna Das Gupta. He was nominated by the president. He resigned to the Rajya Sabha, contested in West Bengal, got defeated, and again he was renominated under Section 80A and 83. Now, this is an issue which attracted the attention of a lot of people because the first time the same person is now renominated. Now, my question is whether the act permits a person who resigned again is to be renominated to the same position.
Sorry, sir, I'm not aware of this.
Okay. You also is very much interested in guiding and mentoring juniors. Very nice trait. I would like to know from you what exactly is the difference between guiding and mentoring and coaching like that. There are certain terms what we use. So what exactly do we mean by mentoring?
So mentoring is essentially understanding the problem or the issue with the mentee is facing and work with them along the way, help them realize their strengths as well as work on their weaknesses and different aspects of personality they should be able to grow. So that is the idea of mentoring and instilling more confidence in them so that they can take key decisions in their life and don't become mere followers of popular discourse. So that is the idea of mentoring.
The mentor, what qualities he should possess to give the guidance to the mentee?
So the mentors, first of all, should have a lot of patience to be able to listen to the problem and identify the issue in its entirety. He has to have empathy also so as to understand the problem and see the problem from their perspective. A mentor has to be unbiased and non-judgmental so that he is not imposing his own will or his own idea, but empowering the person to take decisions on their own life. They should be able to have good communication skills so that they can build that trust that exists. That is very essential in mentoring. And a mentor should also be a leader. He should have a vision, and he should be able to instill confidence in the mentee to believe in the vision and achieve it. So these are some of the qualities.
Yeah, can you give some examples, outstanding examples as great mentors of the world, maybe, or from India or from the world?
Sir, I'm aware about Robin Sharma. He's been mentoring people. He's been mentoring entrepreneurs also, and he's very famous. He has written several books on mentoring as well. Sir, I can recall his name.
Okay, it's nice speaking to you, Mrs. The. Over to Somshekarji.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Now, very recently, the union government made some amendments to rules of e-commerce. Can you explain 3 or 4 amendments and what is their impact?
So the amendments are introduced in order to ensure that there is a level playing field between the e-commerce as well as the brick and mortar retail companies that are there. So it prohibits the e-commerce company to engage in deep discounting as well as engaging in those businesses which are being listed or which are being sold, who are selling their products utilizing the platform of the e-commerce. Sir, I can recall this particular.
Specific terms, you are giving a description.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyway, I think we'll go to the next issue. You come from a family where both your parents are into policing, and I think they are now in Delhi, and both of them come from UP. And I think in both the states, I think the record of policing, especially women's safety, and the image of police is nothing much to write home about. Given a responsibility, assuming that you become an IAS officer, IPS officer, or given a responsibility, how would you improve the image of police, among women or, among people as a friendly force and not, the way they are perceived now?
Yes. Sir, in order to improve the image of police, we can encourage community policing so that the police officer engage with local volunteers and they are able to prevent the crime before it happens. Moreover, the local people also understand the problems which are faced by police in discharging their duties and the trust deficit that right now exists between the police and public can be bridged. We can also sensitize the police force so that they become more empathetic in nature and they become a more friendly force so that a people-centric approach is taken in the police services. Introduction of more technology can also ensure that there is greater objectivity in the discharging of services by the police and the corruption is not there. The Public Complaints Authority can be set up, an effective grievance redressal mechanism can be introduced so that people, if have any grievance against the police officers, can report it. So, sir, these are some of the steps that can be taken to improve the image of police.
Is it because of political influence that police in UP are behaving like that, or is there anything else that makes them not friendly? Are there any other issues that determine their attitude in terms of recruitment, people, what?
So nearly 85% of the police force are recruited at the constabulary position, and they come from the society and inherit the bias as well as the prejudice that is there in the society. So there is a need to counsel them, to sensitize them, and ensure that the constitutional values are followed, and they are not imposing their own biases, because we have seen that even in certain reports, there are certain communities which are targeted by the police also, the minority and the more vulnerable ones. So that is there, along with the political interference. Sir, also, police is at the forefront of any kind of inconvenience faced by the public. So they have to bear the wrath of public even if other arms of the administration fails. So these are some of the reasons because of which the image of police is not very good in eyes of people.
Okay, ma'am. Coming to economics, the impact of COVID, and we often hear our finance minister saying she sees some green shoots, economy reviving, rebounding, bouncing back, all these words are thrown at us, but we don't seem to be, benefiting. Our impact of negative impact only looks real. As an economist, can you explain in simple words what drives an economy? What is the fuel for a layman? What we can look forward to say that the Indian economy is bouncing back, improving, or whatever in the next 6 months since COVID second wave is anyway come down.
So the confidence of consumer as well as producer in the economic growth is very critical if we want to bounce back. Along with that, there are certain indicators which can be looked at to assess the performance of the economy. For example, the Purchaser Managers Index, which assesses the producer's confidence in the economy. The RBI also releases the Consumer Confidence Index, which shows that how much confidence the consumer has. The unemployment rate and the inflation rate are some of the rates which directly impact the common man, and they are being sought after in order to see if the economy is doing good. On a higher scale, the fiscal deficit as well as the debt to GDP ratio also tells us the sustainability and the confidence that there is in the government, and that also impacts the investors' decision to invest in the economy, and it's very critical to experience a growth revival.
Ma'am, you are talking more like an economist, but what I am looking at as an ordinary person, what indicators, is it more spending? Should the government give more money to people? Is the stock market, Sensex, any indicator? What do we look for to say that the economy is growing? Or what the government should do to drive this economy?
So the prices of the commodity is the first thing that common man looks for in order to assess his own perspective of the economy. If the inflation is low, then the confidence of the consumer is also low. The sir.
Okay, we'll go to another issue. I think as an economist, you should have some view. Demonetization on November 8th, 8 baje on November 8th. Has it set the Indian economy on the decline? Has it achieved its objectives? And what do you think?
So the demonetization.
Yeah.
2016, you forgot to say.
November 8th, 2016.
So the demonetization has impacted the informal as well as the cash incentive sectors very deeply. And this has been carried forward as we are seeing that the MSME growth as well as that of the consumption growth has been declining since 2016. The twin shock of GST along with demonetization, in my opinion, was not very well planned, because of which the negative impact outweighed the positive ones. The aim was to curb the black money in the economy. However, a lot of black money exists as assets, as gold. So in my opinion, it was not a very well thought decision.
You are a bit in variance with the government and finance minister who think COVID has impacted more than all that, and all our ills in the economy and decline is mostly COVID-19. And finally, you have played volleyball at what stage? Is it college or university?
So the college level.
College level. In Kerala, and you have been in Madras for some time, Chennai, but in Kerala there is a place called Namakuzi. It's considered to be the cradle of volleyball. Have you heard of it? Do you know some great players from there have come?
Sorry, sir, I am not aware.
Anyway, what is the status of Indian volleyball globally? Indian women's volleyball. I'm talking about women's volleyball. Sorry.
So the women's volleyball has won bronze medal in the Asian Games in 1980s. So apart from that, the achievements have been muted, and there is a need to promote women volleyball in the country. There is a lot of potential and latent talent, particularly in the rural areas. So we need to give more encouragement as well as the infrastructural support in order to bring out the great players that are there in the country.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Ishita, this is the end of the mock interview or mock personality test. We have taken exactly 1 hour. It is somewhat longish, but that's because you are a very interesting personality. The actual interview in the UPSC will never exceed 25 minutes. So you will have to get used to giving answers which are somewhat briefer, so that the UPSC board will be able to test you in a wider range of fields and ask you more questions. So now we'll give you feedback one after the other. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm very impressed with your performance. You are very well informed, very balanced. You keep your cool, your communication skills are very high, something that we don't normally come across. You are very bold also. And wherever you have spoken with clarity of mind. So I am not able to point out areas where you ought to work on. When is the actual interview?
The 3rd of August.
That's about a month's time. So what you should do on a month in the next 30 days is to build on what you perceive and what my co-panelists perceive as your somewhat weak areas. You have plenty of strong areas. Of course, being a resident of Delhi, you quoted Article 239 AA very correctly, and your sympathies are with the elected government of the Delhi administration, which is really democratic. The appointed executive is nobody. He's not really answerable to anyone except to his boss who appointed him. And the only qualification he has is when he was in the Indian Administrative Service, he must have been a good chamcha, boss management, nothing else. Whereas the lawfully elected government is answerable to the public. They have to deliver. And they have already showed that they are capable of delivering. In the realm of government schools, they have made a big difference. So you, in your own very subtle way, said that while you don't know whether it is constitutional or not, but the amendment itself is somewhat uncalled for, and you were very clear that the Supreme Court did not intend such an amendment. They said it is not for the LG to go on carrying every issue to the President of India. He should be amicable. And you also quoted that the 4th part of Article 239 AA, where the LG is supposed to be aided and advised by the Council of Ministers. Well, that is in the Constitution itself. He has to know that he is merely an instrument. He is not anything beyond that. Anyway, your answers are good. In the matter of reservation of seats to women in the parliament, probably you are not very clear with the factual information. When Dr. Satyanarayana said that it has already been passed by Rajya Sabha. Of course, it lapses with all the bills lapse. They have to introduce a bill de novo, afresh, when the new Lok Sabha comes. So the Lok Sabha has to look at it politically. I don't know really why they oppose. After all, they will be nominating their own lady candidates. But by and large, there is certain bias. I don't know what that bias is. But you said you don't know. Maybe you should also go a little deep into this. What is preventing the political leaders from agreeing to that? Of course, they may be winnability. Maybe they are under an impression that lady candidates won't be able to capture booths or bring in that kind of required money of crores and crores of rupees for each constituency. I really don't know. I've now been a politician myself. But when they have chief ministers, lady chief ministers who made a mark, Mamata Banerjee, and in Uttar Pradesh, Mayawati has been reasonably successful. So there are many people, even long ago in my childhood, Sucheta Kripalani, what should be Indira Gandhi, one of the most successful prime ministers of India. Ladies can do very well. But anyway, I don't know really. So on the whole, I have failed in my duty to identify areas where you should work on. But I'm sure my co-panelists will not fail. So I'll now hand you over to our former Chief Secretary, Dr. Gopal. He, I'm sure, will find some chink in your armor. Okay. Dr. Gopal.
Yes, sir. Yes. Ms. ISHITA.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I totally agree with the compliments given by the chairman about your performance in this session. I think in addition to what he said, you are also very confident in your replies, which is a very good trait. You should keep it up. There are one or two, issues of interpretation and the way you should look at. I'm not putting answers into your mouth, but in order to be logical and in order to be consistent with your approach in giving answers, I would like to take the example of you are saying that when it is a question of MSP, it's not relevant anymore, scientifically. And if at all you have to compensate or pay something to the farmers towards the costs of cultivation, etc., a direct benefit transfer is good. Now, in the same breath, if you have to look at the tariff being used as an economic instrument to conserve resources like water, like electricity.
Yes.
Imagine Delhi government giving 200 liters water free and for a family per month, and 200 KL, not liters, I'm sorry, 200 KL or 20 KL, 20 into 1,000, that is 20,000 liters a month. There are people who have tendency to have two connections, for instance, and each getting scot-free and not paying. Instead, in order to be consistent, if you had said, see, there's no definite answer actually, but I'm talking about logic. In order to ensure that they don't resort to these dubious means of, getting over the rule and cheating the government, quote unquote, maybe a direct benefit transfer to the extent of 200 KL of water, particularly when the meters, they don't function very well and so on and so forth. It would have been better. But your answer that if they consume less than 200 meters, some incentive should be given is also all right. But look at reflect on this and then see how we could improve on your answering capacities. That's one. Then economics, as I said, you can answer anything and defend. But you ultimately got into a trap, I don't know, knowingly or unknowingly. When the inflation is low, you said the confidence of consumers is low. Now look at that. Maybe unwittingly, I don't know how that came out. There is no justification for that. See, you should essentially look at those issues from the point of view of saying that after all, inflation is not bad. In a developing economy, inflation is not bad. Prices will have to go up. But as long as the wages and incomes are correspondingly increasing to have the same purchase parity as far as goods and services are concerned, inflation is not bad. So look at, again, reflect and then see how you should be able to bring in you are applying your theoretical knowledge very well to the situations, but since you are not worked in the field, maybe your answers will be more of theoretical nature. It's okay, doesn't matter. But if you stress yourself more, since you are not giving wrong answers, you are not guessing, maybe your analysis will be adding value to your answers. That's one. The second thing, on the matter of fact, since your questions will be generally based on the detailed application form, your Madras School of Economics and the recent act brought in by Tamil Nadu government will be relevant for you. You update yourself on that. Then about RERA, Real Estate Regulatory Authority. So real estate sector is something which provides a lot of employment and boost to the economy, increasing the incomes of people at large. There is some ratio of investment of 1 unit in real estate provides employment to so many units. Okay. So in order to ensure that the consumers don't get cheated, nor the developers, the apartment complex builders, they don't get cheated, this authority has been established under the RERA Act of 2016, so that the interests of both of them are secure, the builder as well as the buyer. Of course, it is applicable only to certain categories like 500 meters and above of the plot and some 8 apartments and above, not to small ones. So this is a matter of fact. Of course, if you don't know, it's okay, but you should not degrade your value by saying that I don't know about RERA. And Delhi being a big city, RERA becomes very relevant. Delhi, Gurugram, and all that. Okay. Then about the facility given by the government of India to borrow more than the 3% of the GSDP. There are 4 conditions, which is again a question of information that you need to acquire. You mentioned one. Actually, the EODB reforms that the states have to carry out, the municipal reforms that have to be carried out, the power sector reforms where the average revenue and the average costs are compared, and where the revenue realization is more. That's a reform measure. Okay. And one nation, one ration card. So these are the conditionalities which the government of India imposed, and incrementally, to the extent the reforms are achieved, the states also get entitled to the corresponding increase in their borrowing power. So the factual things, you don't know, it's okay, it doesn't matter. But since you are answering all the questions very well and your answers are very well informed, so let you not have the deficiency of saying that I do not know about these important issues. You have time. You better update yourself. Yes. I think that will do you very well. You are a very potential candidate. You have high potential. I wish you all the very best.
ISHITA, I must compliment you, for your very measured responses to the questions put to you. You are not in an unseemly hurry to answer questions, even if you know them very well. So it gives the listener an impression that you are taking the questions very seriously, the import of the question, and also mentally assessing the wider gamut of issues involved in it, and then how you can frame your answers within the short time between the question posed to you and your response. So in that sense, it gives me an impression that you are not only weighing and measuring each and every question, but also structuring your responses very well. Except that in a couple of cases, here and there, content was a little issue. When it particularly came to GST about reverse charge, I think you simply said whatever came to your mind. That is where I found a bit because up till then you were answering every question quite on a quite in a very logical and very reasoned responses you were giving. But then when it came to this particular terminology, maybe you could have said you are not very clear and you are not very sure, but then you chose to answer it, whatever came to your mind. This is I was a bit surprised. Actually, reverse charge mechanism is, a GST dealer who supplies goods or services to another dealer who is registered under the GST. Since he is not registered, he cannot charge tax to the registered dealer. So instead, the brunt of paying tax to the state falls on the receiver of the goods. Okay, because you know very well, up to a certain threshold, there is no obligation of registration under GST. It's as a matter of policy. Because, as you know, the canons of a good tax policy or tax system is that it should also be efficient in terms of, the collection cost, isn't it? So if you are trying to get, say, 1 rupee, how much of tax, how much of money you should be spending to get that 1 rupee? So this is called the efficiency of administration of a tax, tax administration. So therefore, in order not to reach each and every taxpayer in the economy or a potential taxpayer in the economy, we take a conscious policy decision to keep someone out of the tax system, so that the tax administration's energy is not unnecessarily spent in chasing, small people at a great cost, isn't it? So if once a dealer is registered on the rolls of the department, it means that there is also an administrative cost associated with collection of that tax from that taxpayer. So sometimes it is not economical to collect, say 1 rupee, and by spending, say 40 paisa or 50 paisa from one particular taxpayer. So this is called the efficiency principle, economy principle. So therefore, in this particular case, since the thresholds do apply for a business entity to register under GST regime, some are kept outside the system, so that the tax arm does not, the administration arm does not reach them, because it doesn't make sense to bring everyone into the net. Okay, in such situation, but at the same time, the state must also allow him, the right of, doing, carrying on business, isn't it? It is something which is provided under the constitution. So therefore, what should be done? A threshold is created, and then at the same time, you also have to establish that trail from which end to which end goods have come and all that. So therefore, here the reverse charge is created. So the one who is not registered under the tax system, okay, is let off, but then the one who receives from him, the burden is shifted to him. Okay, so that is one clarity. Of course, you could not get that as far as the inheritance rights are concerned. The term is co-parcenary. That means you get that right as a matter of birth, at the time of birth itself. That means, this is also one more measure in the direction of, gender equality. Okay. So earlier the scenario was different, but now the Supreme Court has lent some clarity to the issue. Okay, they have gone into some of the past judgments and all that. Now the established rule is that a woman is as much, equal to a male member of the family, insofar as inheritance of ancestral property is concerned. Okay, right. I think that's all. Then, of course, the Me Too movement is primarily about talking about sexual abuse in public domain, and also regardless of the what is called time limitation. Okay, earlier there was, in the overall scheme of law, that beyond a certain point you cannot raise issues. That way back, in so many years back, something has happened, therefore now I am coming before the court, then court would apply what is called the Limitation Act. But insofar as, the contribution of Me Too movement is that even abuses or any injustices suffered can also be raised regardless of the time limit. Okay, that has been the most significant impact of the Me Too movement. So if you can fine tune some of these things, by way of reading and catching up with, lots of material is available these days. So maybe if you can supplement your reading, and also go into a few more details, I think your responses will be more comprehensive, and there will not be any scope for the board also to feel that, you are deficient in certain departments, certain aspects. Okay. So I think the time now available to you should be fruitfully utilized, so that your success is, assured. Okay. So on those lines, if you start working from now onwards, I am very confident that you will find yourself in the merit list. All the best and God bless you.
Ms. ISHITA, I agree with the chairman on your strengths. You got very good strengths, your communication skills, the way you just process the question and give the answer, and the knowledge bank, all these things are very good points. In the process, sometimes you are also giving certain answers, what I observed, which are not, I think, factually correct. So there you must be very careful, because you may give 99 answers correctly. If one answer is given wrongly, that remains in the mind of the member. So there you must be very careful. If you don't know, say directly that I don't know. Just you told about the Article 80. So when I asked, you said that you are not aware. That's a very fair answer. So I will come to that point where I asked about the 3 labor codes. When I asked about this, they're called the 4 labor codes. So that's the issue which I asked, where I am asking about the positives, or maybe the trade unions which are not happy with that. So there are 2 specific issues which the courts come. One is, earlier, if the number of employees are less than 100, then the management need not take the permission for the government to dismiss these people. But here, that number is now made to 300. Up to 300, they need not take any permission. So that is the issue where the trade unions are not happy. Other aspect is, if they want to give a strike call, earlier only 2 weeks time is required. But here now, it's now extended to 60 days. So 60 days they have to wait. So from that point of view, there are negative aspects, positive from others' point of view, negative from the trade union's point of view. There are positive aspects are also there. So there, I think the clarity is not there in your answer. So there, I felt, I think you have to strengthen your answers. Coming to this GNCDA, that's called the Delhi government, this Amendment Act as concerned, you said very rightly the Article 239 AA. But in the Article 239 AA, there is a clause 4, which is very, very important. So there, the amendment, my emphasis is whether it is constitutional. So whether it is constitutional, you answered that it's not democratic because the democratic forces are not properly representing by the amendment. But as far as this amendment is concerned, whether it's constitutional, it is not constitutional because it is violating the Article 239 AA clause 4. So that clause 4 is very important. Please go through that clause and see why it is not constitutional, why this amendment is not constitutional. So that aspect you can take care of. Coming to that women reservation aspect, I asked about the women empowerment. Empowerment is about the self-worth, realizing the self-worth and the decision making and able to influence the change. So the 3 yardsticks we can take as the women empowerment in general. Why this is not being pushed? You said political will. Political will is okay, but what about the initiation from the women? So today, the number of women representatives are more compared to earlier. Earlier it is only 11.8%, but now it has gone up. But these people, they are not coming out. and they are not demanding it. So unless you demand it, it cannot be taken by all the parties. So there, it is not only the political will, but the women, they are the real beneficiaries. They have to come forward, irrespective of the parties. So they are confining themselves to the party and not coming forward. But here, what is important, the collective bargaining is very important. Maybe at the first day of the day, they must come together and they must put the demand. So almost that 2008 to almost now, so see, 13 years got elapsed. So this is a high time that they must come together and they must demand for the passing of the bill, which is only 33%, not even 50%. So that much I think can be they push it through in the parliament, because unless the women reservation is passed, I think the representation cannot go up. Okay, coming to the 80 Article 80, that's a very important aspect which is there in the news. Please go through, because this is by the parliament, by the president. So it was given, notification was given by the Home Ministry, but appointment was done by the president. So here the article was not properly understood, and the People's Representation Act also 153, section 153. You also must go through that article and come to a conclusion, because there is a possibility, because such remote issues may come forward, because when you are answering all the right things, sometimes a break may be put like this by asking such questions. Be aware of this issue. And coming to the mentoring, you said about Robin Sharma. Robin Sharma, of course, I also respected. I also attended his workshops in Hyderabad. But there are great people, worldwide leaders in this, mentors like Stephen R. Covey, this called Brian Tracy, Anthony Robbins. So there are great people. So you'll be benefited if you can go through their books and their audios, or maybe their videos also. They will be very interesting. So you can also improve the bank of the people who are in this business of mentoring. That will be very useful. So these are a few things, the value additions to your knowledge. And if you can give these things, I think you will get definitely. You are a very good material. We are sure about that. That's why we want to put some controversial issues to bring out the best from you. I think you will definitely get into the civil services, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Ms. ISHITA, I think you heard about your communication skills. I think measured tone, good response, I think good depth in understanding and knowledge. I concur with my panelists. A few things I just want to add in terms of your awareness. This e-commerce, amendments are, ban on flash sale, like, smartphones, sales. Then companies cannot have in-house labels. Reliance and all these companies cannot have their own in-house labels, and they should have a compliance or grievance officer for redressal. So these are three important amendments that have been brought. And in terms of demonetization, I think your answer was clear and forthright. That was quite good. And as far as volleyball is concerned, the place I told you, Nammakuzi in Ernakulam is considered a cradle of women's volleyball. Nearly half a dozen players have come from there, and the first Arjuna Award winner from Kerala, Eliamma, she also is from there. So I think it produced a lot of volleyball players from one small place. And finally, on economics, economics is a dismal science, and thanks to COVID, our lives are also a bit dismal. So I expect you to, be more clear in answering in simpler words than jargon, in how it impacts, what are the drivers of our economy, and explain in a way that we understand. So that is one suggestion. Overall, as co-panelists have said, you are very good, and you should make it this time. All the best.
Okay, Ishita, you have heard a very comprehensive feedback from all of us. At the end of which, is there anything you want to ask us?
No, sir.
All the best then. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.